With the NFL season officially over, we are getting closer to free agency. There are so many different free agents that the Bengals have been maybe linked to, maybe rumored to sign in the offseason. There's been lots of different free agents the Bengals fans want Cincinnati to get. I'm going to be talking about some free agent targets for the Bengals. So let's go ahead and get started here with one of the more popular names, and that is right tackle Trent Brown. Brown is massive. He is 6'8", 360 pounds. According to PFF this past season, he had 579 snaps, 2 penalties, 3 sacks, and his PFF grade was 80.2. He can play left tackle. He can play right tackle. It's really nice when you can get a guy like Brown who's versatile and can play multiple positions. He's played over 50 games at right tackle. He's played over 30 games at left tackle as well. One thing that I am kind of concerned about with Brown is he's missed a lot of games the last couple of years. The last 5 years, he's missed 29 games. If you're going to give a guy a lot of money, you want him to be there every single game. And when Brown, you don't know if you can really rely on him to be healthy the whole season or not. But I think Brown is an interesting, intriguing option for the Bengals and a very possible replacement for Jonah Williams. This past season, this was his lone season starting at right tackle. And it's very expected that Jonah Williams will be moving on from Cincinnati in the offseason. Lots of Bengal fans are wanting maybe a right tackle when it comes to free agency or maybe even the draft. And I would highly expect Cincinnati to get a right tackle, whether it's in the draft or in free agency. Somebody else I think Cincinnati should look at is tight end Noah Fant. This past season, Fant with Seattle had 32 receptions for 414 yards. He is a guy who is only 26 years old, so he has lots of upside, still has lots of play in him. He's already played 5 years. So he's already played 5 years, and he's just 26 years old. Throughout his 5-year career, he has 252 receptions, over 2,800 receiving yards, and 14 touchdowns. It seems like the past couple of years, tight end for Cincinnati has just kind of been a revolving door. We lost Uzama. We bring in Hayden Hurst for a 1-year contract. He leaves to go to Carolina. We bring in Irv Smith Jr. this past season. That was an absolutely terrible signing. Irv Smith Jr. did absolutely nothing with Cincinnati. I don't think anybody really thought he was going to play this bad for the Bengals this past season, but I think Fant would be a significant upgrade over Irv Smith Jr., and I think he's a guy maybe Cincinnati should look at here in free agency. This tight end class when it comes to, free agency market, it's not great. So you don't know if maybe teams would overpay a guy like Fant just to get a team need and just to get a reliable tight end. That might be the case here. Who knows? But I'm looking at Fant, maybe a 1-year contract, maybe around $4 million, $5 million, something like that. Maybe the Bengals will let to go a 2-year contract. That's something I think the Bengals should definitely consider here if they get Fant. But I think Fant is a significant upgrade at tight end. He would definitely fill that void for a desperate need for tight end right now for Cincinnati. Fant would be a great option for Cincinnati in free agency. Another tight end here I have is tight end Gerald Everett. This past season, he was with the LA Chargers. He had 50 receptions for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. When you look at Everett, he's 29 years old. So when you look at the age, there's a big difference between Everett and Noah Fant. Realistically, though, I think Everett is more likely to sign with Cincinnati because he has connections with Zac Taylor. In 2017-2018 seasons, Everett was with the Rams, and Zac Taylor was on the Rams coaching staff at that point. So Zac Taylor already kind of has some familiarity with Joe Everett. When you look at Zac Taylor and his coaching staff, they kind of been known for getting guys that they coached with before coming to Cincinnati. When you look at BJ Hill, he was with Lou Anarumo. Eli Apple was with Lou Anarumo. Michael Thomas was with Zac Taylor. So I would not be surprised if the Bengals will maybe lean to Everett. I think it would make a lot of sense. Preferably of the two, I would rather have Noah Fant strictly because his age. He's 3 years younger, and I think he has more potential in this Bengals offense. But I think Everett is probably more the realistic option for Cincinnati. Maybe they get Everett to a 1-year contract and maybe draft a tight end and mid-round, maybe rounds 3, 4, 5, something like that. But this would not be a bad signing for Cincinnati, but honestly, I'd much rather have Noah Fant than Joe Everett. Christian Wilkins is another player to watch out here for Cincinnati. I don't think this is likely, but lots of Bengal fans are wanting Cincinnati to get Wilkins. He's one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. This past season with the Miami Dolphins, he had 9 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, and 23 quarterback hits. When you look at Wilkins, Spotrac has his market value at $20.2 million per season. That is a extremely a lot of money for a guy like Wilkins. if the Bengals were to sign Wilkins, it pretty much clearly means they will not be keeping DJ Reader. You don't know how concerned Cincinnati may be with Reader's injury. They may not want to sign him to a long-term contract because with him coming off his season and the injury, I think Wilkins coming to Cincinnati is unlikely, but there is a connection here that would kind of make sense. And if Wilkins does sign with Cincinnati, I feel like this may have a big part of it. When you look at Marion Hobby, the Bengals defensive line coach, he coached Christian Wilkins during his time at Clemson, and Hobby was the defensive line coach in 2019 and 2020 with the Miami Dolphins when Christian Wilkins was with Miami. So not only did Marion Hobby coach Wilkins once, he coached him twice with two different teams. That's not something you really see a lot, two different times a coach coaches a player at two different teams. But that's something to kind of look at there, and there is a connection there with Hobby and Wilkins. Realistically, I don't think a deal with Wilkins and Cincinnati will get done, but this is kind of wishful thinking, and this would be the huge marquee free agent that Bengal fans will be wanting to get. Jermaine Eluemunor is a guy who's really, been picking up steam to possibly become to Cincinnati the last couple of weeks. When you look at his PFF, grades and everything, he had 905 snaps this past season, 5 penalties, 6 sacks, and his grade was 68.5. He's defended Joe Burrow on Twitter. He's expressed his desire to want to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, and lots of Bengal fans on Twitter have been really wanting them to get Eluemunor. He's a guy who can, play really any position except center. And this is something to look at here if you're Cincinnati, because maybe you want to sign Eluemunor to a 1 year, maybe a 2-year contract, sign him at right tackle to replace Jonah Williams. But if a guy like Fuega, the offensive tackle from Oregon State, is still there at 18, maybe a guy like J.C. Latham is there at 18, you can maybe draft one of those guys. Eluemunor could start at right tackle, and you can develop that rookie offensive lineman. Or if you want to, like I mentioned, he can play any position except center. You could have Eluemunor maybe play left guard and replace Cordell Volson, and you would already have a starting right tackle rookie and a replacement for Cordell Volson. That's something to look at there if you're Cincinnati. But this would not be a bad idea for Cincinnati to get more right tackle help. I think that's one of the biggest needs this offseason because, like I said, the odds of Jonah Williams staying at Cincinnati are pretty much zero at this point. Whether it's Trent Brown, whether it's Jermaine Eluemunor, they have to get a right tackle. Either one I would be fine with. And, Eluemunor is not as good as Trent Brown. Like I mentioned, he has a 68 PFF grade. Trent Brown has a 80.2 PFF grade. But even when you look at Eluemunor compared to Jonah Williams, Jonah Williams has a 58.5 PFF grade and gave up 8 sacks this past season. Eluemunor gave up 6 sacks and had a 68.5 grade. So he's much better than Jonah Williams, but Brown is much better than Eluemunor. Brown or Eluemunor, either one I would be fine with. You just have to get that replacement for Jonah Williams. The right tackle is a desperate need for the Bengals heading into this offseason. One final player I think the Bengals should look at here is left guard Dalton Risner. This past season, Risner had 745 snaps, 3 penalties. He had a PFF grade of 57.1, and he allowed 0 sacks this past season. To put that in comparison with Bengals starting left guard Cordell Volson, Volson had 1,087 snaps this past season. He had 3 penalties, gave up 5 sacks, and his PFF grade was 58.3. Risner can play multiple positions on offensive line, which is very good. When you look at Cordell Volson, he's a guy who isn't terrible, isn't great, but when you're looking at the Bengals, a championship contending team, anytime you have a chance to upgrade, I think you need to upgrade. I don't think Volson is that guy at left guard. Maybe they sign a guy like Dalton Risner to compete with Volson. Like I mentioned earlier, maybe they even sign Eluemunor, for a right tackle right now. But if they draft a right tackle, maybe they move Eluemunor to left guard to replace Cordell Volson. When looking at this left guard position, I feel like it's just kind of going unnoticed a little bit here because everybody's fixating on right tackle. Right tackle is the main issue of this offensive line, but I feel like left guard is not that far behind when it comes to team needs on this offensive line. But I feel like left guard is something the Bengals should really try to be looking at here to upgrade in the offseason. When you're looking at some Bengal free agent targets, there's right tackle Trent Brown, tight end Noah Fant, tight end Gerald Everett, defensive tackle Christian Wilkins, right tackle Jermaine Eluemunor, and left guard Dalton Risner. I know I missed several players, but I'm trying to kind of keep this realistic as possible. I know there's some other players, maybe like Justin Mutabuke, defense tackle for the Ravens. I don't really think that signing's likely, but I'm sure there's lots of other targets for Cincinnati to maybe look at here in the offseason. Comment some, free agents you think the Bengals should sign in the offseason. That about does it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you're new to the channel or receiving videos before, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time on the Sports Stu Hines Show.